And we are going to work on the technology for online. And who else do we have online? So while we get the technology worked out, I'm going to ask everyone to stand for the pledge. Can folks online hear now?
I can.
Okay, thank you. All right. And so just a reminder for members online to keep your cameras on during the meeting. Okay. So before we get going with our agenda, I just wanted to take a minute to do a quick review of some of our rules to regulate, because I know that this month we are discussing a topic that's been of interest to a lot of people in the community, and some may be attending this week and next week to follow the issue or following online. For those who may just be following RTM meetings for the first time, in general, we meet twice a month. First for our informational meeting, which is what this is, and then the following week for our regular meeting, which will be next Monday. We follow the same agenda for both meetings, and informational meetings are just that, an opportunity for our members to hear more in depth on the month's agenda items, including asking questions of presenters. We do not vote on agenda items at informational meetings, and per our RTM rules to regulate, we do not have public comment at informational meetings. And so for anyone that is attending this evening interested in giving public comment, I hope that you'll come back next Monday when you're able to do so, when you have the opportunity. And certainly I'll respectfully ask that anyone who's here to observe the meeting this evening do simply just that. I know we're discussing a topic that's generated a lot of interest, and many people may have very strong feelings about it. I'll ask that people refrain from speaking out, cheering, booing, etc. And should anyone attending or participating not be able to adhere to that, I'll first ask you to stop with a verbal warning, and then if you're not able to do so, we'll kindly ask that you leave the meeting at that point. I also just wanted to remind our RTM members about our rules regarding informational meetings, and that members may only ask questions, and those questions shall relate only to the items on the warning for the upcoming voting meeting. Commentary and debate shall not be permitted. And so again, just giving you a heads up, I will kindly, if we start to get into debate and commentary, I will just gently bring you back to our topic at hand. So our first item on the agenda this evening is the Fairfield Traffic Authority report on the automated speed camera enforcement devices. Since this program is administered by the Fairfield Police Department, we have Chief Mike Paris and Captain Hector Irizarry here to give this report. So per ordinance requirements, this report will normally be given to the RTM in June each year. However, given that this is a new program and the citation period only began on June 1st, we asked for the report to be in August. So since at that point we'd have, oh, it's a great ringtone. We'd have some more data about the initial rollout of the program. And for folks following along, this is agenda item number 4, and the backup begins on page 3. And so Chief Paris and Captain Irizarry and First Select Person Vitale, I will turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. I'll keep my comments short, and I'll leave Captain Irizarry to give you the introduction. Firstly, thank you for having us, and it's important for us to be here to present to you what we see the program is doing from a law enforcement perspective. And I think that's just the key word there, is to remember that there's a law enforcement perspective on what we see and what we see traffic doing on our experience, and then there's what the program means in general. But I'll leave it to Captain Irizarry. He spearheaded this program. He's done a great job in pushing everything together during a time that is new. And I think that's one thing to keep in mind. This program is new in the state of Connecticut, let alone being new in the town of Fairfield. We, as a police department, look for innovative ways to try to slow traffic. We've been doing that for years. And since the state of Connecticut came out with this opportunity and this tool, and again, that's one thing to keep in mind, is that this is a tool that we use as one aspect of controlling traffic and one aspect of reducing speed in our town. And as we move forward, there may be things that we should adjust or change, etc. But it's only prudent of us to work and based on fact, so that we as police can police as we normally do, and use the information we gain from our tools, not just this program, but other tools, to see where the program should go in our law enforcement opinion. So with that, I'll give it to Captain Irizarry.
Thank you, Chief. Captain Hector is our Fairfield Police Department, the Bureau Commander for the Special Services Bureau, oversees traffic safety amongst anything else the Chief throws my way, I'll take a hold of. So good evening, Madam Moderator and members of the RTM. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you this evening regarding Fairfield's Automatic Traffic Enforcement Safety Device Program. The ATSD briefing report that I've provided to you has been provided to each of you and represents our best efforts to thoroughly and objectively document the actions taken by the Fairfield Police Department throughout the planning, development, implementation, and ongoing administration of this program. It reflects many months and years of hard work and is intended to serve as a transparent and comprehensive record of the process, including the engineering studies conducted by the Fairfield Police Department, operational decisions that were made, the statutory approval process, the program's performance to date, and the numerous enhancements that have been implemented based on operational experience and community feedback. Our hope is that the briefing report you have will answer many of the questions raised over the past several months and provide the RTM with a clear understanding of how this program was developed and implemented. Rather than read through the entire report this evening, which is about 56 pages, I respectfully submitted it for your consideration and welcome any questions the RTM may have. If there are additional questions we are unable to answer this evening, I will make every effort to obtain that information and provide a timely response. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Captain Irizarry. So we'll open it up to questions. As always, we ask folks who are online, their questions will come after members who are in person. And so I will open up the floor to questions. Representative Barron.
Okay, I guess I'm going to start this one off tonight. Good night. Good night. Good evening. Yeah, good night. Goodbye, guys. Good evening. Thank you guys for coming. I think that I'm just going to ask a couple questions, both for my information, and I think it's good to just sort of like get us all on the baseline. Scott Bassang, who's one of our RTM members who was unable to come tonight, gave me some questions, so I'm going to riff off myself and his. I think the first question that I was curious about a few months or prior and have sort of been talking to the Board of Finance about and everything is curious about the cost of the program, and then what that cost might look like if we were to have actual police officers doing it. So whether that was 6 police officers manned at all of those sites. Part of the information that Scott gave, he's really wonderful, was he said that based on the police union contract figures, adding in benefits and total costs, it seems like around 4 officers would likely cost in the range of $550,000 to $750,000 per year before we factor in additional one-time costs like vehicles, etc. Is that about right? And sort of like a second part to that is, we hired those additional officers and they focused solely on traffic enforcement 100% of their time. How many tickets could they issue on a given day if they were rotating between these key sites? So just in general, looking at sort of the cost analysis between the current program and having individuals do what the cameras are doing.
Sure. We'll tackle this together if you don't mind. So to answer your question about what it costs for a new hire of an officer, it's compounded. There's many different things that are involved in it. If I had to give a best educated guess, and again, it's best educated guess, not necessarily factual numbers, based upon what the officers make from their starting point as their salary, including academy time and getting up and running along with their uniforms and all the ancillary things, it's about $190,000 per officer. So that number, approximate again, is to include what it costs to get the officer up and running to an officer that's able to do these things on his own. Obviously, there's ancillary items that come into that as it relates to overtime and special duty, et cetera, equipment, vehicles, things like that. But the officer, just the officer, about 190,000, if I had to make an educated guess. And I'll let Captain Irizarry talk about the enforcement side.
As far as numbers go, so when I first took over special services in the traffic unit, our traffic division, which consists of 4 traffic officers full-time, conducted around 2,700 traffic stops per year. And the complaints I received in my office on a daily basis are speeding, speeding, speeding. What are you going to do about speeding? If I had a nickel for every person that told me that I'm going to have blood on my hands unless I address speeding, I'd probably be a millionaire, would have retired a lot sooner than I am. So moving forward, I'd made some operational enhancements to the traffic safety unit. We still remain at 4 full-time traffic officers, but we went from 2,700 traffic stops to over 13,000 per year. That is a tremendous increase. Do the math, it's a couple 100% increase. However, the complaints never stopped coming in. They did not slow down, not one bit. Sprinkle in a couple of near fatal accidents during that time, the calls kept coming and coming and coming. So we had to do something else, because jumping from 2,700 traffic stops per year to well over 13,000, we're now 3rd in the state for traffic safety enforcement. We're still not having a huge enough impact to increase traffic safety in our town. That's why we went with the ATSD program as a means, and as the chief mentioned, a tool to help us improve traffic safety for our residents.
Thank you. I also realized I forgot to say Emma Barron, District 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Oh, Representative Pistilli.
Thank you. Sharon Pistilli, District 5, thank you for being here. We received in District 5 several letters specifically addressed to our district, and there were concerns. I have a couple of questions, so I'll start with one, and then if you don't mind, I'll have a follow-up. One of the constituents who wrote me mentioned that the crash data, like where crashes have occurred, don't necessarily line up with where we've placed the cameras. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Sure. So we took, and you guys have the report that was submitted to the state. All of those crashes were within the area of the school zones. I'm not saying they were exactly in the school zones, but within that area. So each of those schools has a certain distance. I believe it's about 1,000 feet. Please don't quote me on that, that the school zone is in. However, we had to tie in as many crashes as we could within that 3-year time window that the state required on that road. So no, they may not be exactly in front of the school, but they're a short distance away from each school.
I can just add one thing to that, and I'm stealing his thunder a little bit because this was his wording. I think one of the objectives from the state of Connecticut that we had to achieve was to put these ATSDs within school zones. And those school zones that we picked were the ones that we felt were the most vulnerable. Of course, every school is vulnerable and every school is important to us, and there's many other schools that we do care very much about. But if you put the factual data together with what the state of Connecticut says, this is where you have to put these devices. They can't just be put on any street for that matter. And going back to it, the areas that these schools are positioned are ones that allow for the biggest speed concern. There's straight stretches of roadways. There are areas that have highly trafficked areas. And I think it's only prudent of us to act prior to a severe collision, so the numbers may not show it as to be a high fatal or high injury accident area. But if we're using our best tool, which is our brain and experience as police officers, these are the areas that we chose that we felt would be the most vulnerable, or areas that would be a high concern in our town.
So in other words, it seems to be a combination of data and many years of experience from law enforcement officers who have worked in this town and have the experience to be able to make the decision.
Yes, ma'am. Some of the worst collisions that I've seen were on these roadways. For example, Jefferson Street had a collision occur with a group of college students that had a near fatal collision of several students. That was in the middle of the night. Speed was a factor, and would these programs or would this program stop that? Probably not. However, I think by changing behavior of drivers, by knowing that these are in there every single day, maybe they second guess it at that point and don't get to that point. You know, it's not a physical thing that's going to stop the driver, but we're hoping that these tools are ways to change driver behavior. That's our ultimate goal as police through any enforcement that we give, whether it's our infractions issued from us to the state or by the state. Any tool that we use is hoping to not punish people, but to change their behavior.
Great, thank you. Another question that we received was, I'm going to paraphrase now, so I'm going to use the same "don't quote me" caveat. But the whole idea that if you try to drive 25 miles an hour, it's incredibly difficult. And so even going 35, have you tried going 35 near a school zone? It's, like even going 35 is slow. Why are our speed limits so low? The answer to that is that they're set by the state of Connecticut, right? And if we were to try to change them, it would be a whole process. So we've decided not to do that. The other thing that if you could elaborate on is there's a big difference in pedestrian survival being hit at 25 than at 35 or 40. So I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit, because that's something that we've heard from residents who have written us.
As part of Vision Zero, one of their campaigns is 20 is plenty. The survivability rate at a 20-mile-an-hour crash involving a pedestrian is 90%. 90%. You jump to 40 miles an hour and you have about a 10% survival rating. Again, don't quote me on the exact numbers. I wasn't prepared to give that to you, but it's on the NHTSA website and it's part of the Vision Zero program. So we isolated the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit reduction for the 1 hour in the morning where children are being dropped off, walked, or driven to school, and the 1 hour in the afternoon for the pickup time as well. The rest of the day, it's back to the posted speed limit, which is also set by OSTA, the Office of State Traffic Administration.
Thank you. I have more, but I'd like to give other people
Okay.
turn, so just come
Thank
back
you.
to me later.
Okay. I think I saw Representative Georgiadis next, and then Carson, and then
Hi, Drew Georgiadis, District 9. Thank you for coming. My question is about data collection. In our ordinance and according to our contract, the data is supposed to be eliminated by the vendor after 30 days. How Connecticut has passed the Trust Act in 2019 and updated it most recently this past June. That only applies, I think, to municipalities sharing information with, but you don't have access to that information, correct? It's the vendor. So how are we going to make sure that the vendor, I know it's not a licensed reader, but how are we going to make sure that the vendor eliminates, deletes all information that it's gathered within the 30 days that's required? Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the question. That's a great question. I cannot speak for the vendor ultimate and how they are going to delete the data. I know that they do delete the data after 30 days, and that's what I'm told. It's part of the contract. You're correct. They retain everything, or they only retain the license plate number for that year, because if you could remember, the second subsequent offense within a 1-year time period of the first offense requires an additional fine. So they have to retain the license plate. Everything else is disposed of. I don't know what means or how they do that. Immediately after the case has been adjudicated, whether they paid the fine or they appealed and the appeal process played itself through.
To follow up on that, somebody needs to be watching them. So I hope that there is some process that you make sure that they delete the information. Also, I've received a fine. I'm sure most people in here have. Because my car is leased, by the time I received the notification from my leasing company, the period had passed and I had I could not appeal. So I just want to point that out because that needs to probably be fixed in the ordinance. But
Just
I
make
would,
sure we're sticking to questions tonight.
I'm following up on
Okay,
a
thank
comment
you.
he made, so I did not bring it up. He brought it up. So how will you make sure that they delete the data?
So the vendor is on the contract. How they delete the data is their computer software to do it. I don't have the ability to monitor that computer software. We hold them to the contract. If they violate the contract or anything, state law, et cetera, then that would be up to them to have the issue addressed, not us monitoring them specific. So I don't even know the venue of how we would ensure, other than telling them it's state law and that we don't want them to keep it. We don't have it.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I'm
I know-
satisfied with that
I
answer,
could
but
understand.
thank you.
I could understand your question and your concern, no doubt. But since the vendor has the data and we don't, the only thing that we could do as police is, order them via the contract and the town attorney holding them accountable based upon a contract or violation of contract.
Thank you. Representative Carson.
Laura Carson, District 4. I have a question about why were 6,239 violations rejected? On what grounds do you reject when the person goes through the violations?
So a lot of those rejections could be due to image quality. I erred on the side of caution when we did the initial training for our reviewers. I said if there was ever any question as to whether that vehicle committed the violation or did not, to err on the side of caution the same way we would as police officers and reject the violation. So that would probably be due to the training that they received up until that point. Image clarity has improved because they've updated their camera systems as well. So you'll see that number drop dramatically now.
So that's the main reason they're rejected.
I would say it's image
Yeah.
quality and potentially if that vehicle plate or the color of the vehicle did not match what the listing was coming back as, they would automatically reject that. Because again, I wanted to err on the side of caution.
Okay. So let me ask you this. If someone enters the speed zone and isn't paying attention and they go in at 36 and immediately realize and go down, does that camera just capture that moment that they enter the speed zone, or does it follow it through to the end of the speed zone where maybe they realize and they, fix their speed?
The warning signs are placed in advance of each of these cameras, so the speed limit should be caught before the vehicle enters the actual camera area. So
Even if they reduced it right away, it would still
the
give.
camera's going to capture the high speed coming through at the initial point of observation.
And one more quick thing. There seemed, in the ordinance, it says just 10 miles or more, and then you hear people say 11 miles or more, that is the violation. So if it's a 25-mile-per-hour and someone goes 35, they're gonna get a ticket? Or is it 36?
It's 11 miles for the town
Because
of
it says in
Fairfield.
the ordinance 10.
10 or more.
So 10 would be,
Yes, but
but-
I had requested them to go 11 and over.
okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Representative Britton.
Peter Britton, District 1, the sole Republican in the room, I might add.
Yay, Peter!
Couple of questions that I have. And some of this maybe is a communication issue First being that when this was proposed to me a couple of years ago and I approved this project, as I recall, the approval was really just for those time slots in those specific areas, right? And so what seemed to come out of this was that people could get ticketed in this zone 24/7, right? 365. And that's what I think blew up a lot of the community with regard to how this is. And so just in listening to you earlier, it sounds like, look, you're just going to ticket them for speeding if they were speeding in a normal fashion, right? Opposed to it being in this specific area. But I think that's something that really, I don't know if we need to go back and readdress this in some way and get your take on that in terms of how this has come back in terms of all the letters that we get. That's issue number one, right? And secondly, just in hearing what you said now, they're actually going to get tagged and if they are speeding before they get into the actual zone.
No,
No?
that's not what I said. I said there are warning signs well in advance of each camera.
Oh, gotcha.
So,
Okay.
So that's why it picks up as soon as it hits the camera zone. So we
Okay.
put the warning signs well in advance to give them a reactionary time.
So then I think
to
the
get
other
it
issue
done.
there is with regard to signs, and get your take on that. That people, there's the whole communication of 7 to 8 and then 2 to 3, and and you don't have really time to read that in the course of going into that area. So what's your take on that? I think the signage issue is a real issue here. I'd like to see something that was flashing or some way in which people
And
could
again,
really
please stay focused
understand.
on the questions
So the
versus the
question is, are you
commentary.
going to do something about that?
Thank you, Mr. Britton. The question comes up a lot as it relates to when are you going to enforce? How should you enforce the timing, et cetera? And bear with me. As chief of police in a public forum, I have a hard time with saying it's okay to break the law on certain times, but not on others.
I like to
So
hear
I
that.
get put in a very difficult position when it comes to what is the speed limit and the speed limit sign for that purpose. When are we going to enforce it and when we're not? Unfortunately, I don't get the opportunity as chief to tell my officers only enforce it when you want or when the public wants. It is a hard position to be in, no doubt. I can understand the public's concern with when the school zones say this is for schools and safety of the schools, but why at 3 a.m? And it goes back to my original statement where it's changing driver behavior all the time, so that when they do come upon this area, they are cognizant of the fact that this area is monitored by speed enforcement and that I should be slow throughout this area. Hopefully it changes their mind and their attitude during the times that it is enforced, so that people are not questioning, hey, when is it on? When is it enforcing? Now, with that said, OSTA has made some changes to their guidelines. For any new projects moving forward, flashing signs are to be instituted on every one of these locations. Now, we are, quote, grandfathered in to this previous item, and if we make any changes to the OSTA guideline, we will have to go back before OSTA and then follow the new guidelines that are given to us by OSTA from whenever they put in this new update. But if it talks about when we enforce timelines, et cetera, and I recognize, including myself, driving by, trying to read the signs, it's difficult and it's hard to follow a sign while you're trying to drive your vehicle. Completely understand, being completely forthcoming. But I think that's what our hope is by our education efforts, putting out what the program is meant to do, slow traffic. And if we put it in the minds of the drivers that this area is always monitored, we're hoping that it changes their behavior. I hope at least helps answer the question. I could understand if you have more, but.
Thank you. Representative Zezima.
Thank you. I may have a dead microphone. Oh, no, you can hear me, right? Good evening and thank you. One issue that many people raised who reached out to us was about data accuracy or data integrity. So in other words, you have now produced a statistic that says there was an 82% reduction during this, if you will, test period, but that we are looking at seasonal differences impacted by school being out and other factors, and that perhaps this is not really a good data set. So would you say by the end of October, capturing that much more data during, getting back to what we would call a normal, in normal conditions, would you expect to see much variance? And do you think that the data you have right now does produce an extremely accurate, representative effect of the program?
Again, I'll speak out quickly and then give it to Captain Irizarry from the enforcement side. I could say this: our town is ever changing and constantly a living, breathing environment. We have people in and out throughout the town, and that includes college students in and out, high school students in and out, driving when they can and not, weather conditions, etc. And that's why I think we are the best case scenario as if we are giving our best effort forward to try to change the behavior, we need to let the program work so that we could find factual data throughout the months, because we may see differences throughout the months like we have seen already. And we're hoping that it's because of the driver behavior recognizing the decrease. And who knows, once we get an influx of people driving more, like college students, like high school students, those people who we want to educate more and more, maybe we see an increase. But again, our enforcement efforts are just as equal to our educational efforts when we are giving our information to our high school and college students. We've already put out notices to our college and high school students to say, hey, just be aware, these areas are being monitored. We're trying to give you a forthcoming area notice. If they decide not to change their behavior, I think that's when we'll see actual driver behavior as compared to what the trends are doing.
Thank you. One more question. I do really appreciate your interactive dashboard. I've been watching motor vehicle stops for quite a while, and you've highlighted some here. It's early to know if it's coincidence, correlation, or causation, but do you see any spillover effects in areas and considering other types of moving violations that have been more subdued because of this program and because of people's heightened awareness of their driving?
It's a good question. So that's one of the complaints that I've heard over and over again. Well, they're not speeding by the cameras because now they're going down Round Hill Road, for instance. So we have assigned our traffic officers to secondary routes of travel, and they're going to be enforcing at the state level fine, which is much higher than our town ordinance. I haven't seen those numbers yet, but we are tackling those on a daily basis, especially the Round Hill roads. If you look at Reading Road and Burr, they both run parallel. We had the 2 fatalities on Reading Road. I kind of saw that as a possibility of people, okay, I'm not going to go down Reading, I'll go down Burr now. And that was a big reason why we wanted to put a secondary camera on Burr Street to help mitigate that situation.
Thank you. Representative Waldron.
Cindy Waldron, District 3. I wanted to go back to the conversation that we touched upon, the speed limit. I didn't grow up here. I'm from the Midwest. And when I moved here, the speed limit was higher for the school zone. And I'd never seen that be that high. Everywhere I've lived, it's been 20. And consistently 20. There wasn't, during non-school hours goes to 25. Is that a typical thing for this area, or are we just doing this, or would it not be, this is not going to be a popular comment, I know, but wouldn't it be
Question.
just easier or question rather, to keep it at 20 so we all are consistent and know it's not going to change during the day?
The state approval was for the 20 in the hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon. After that, it resorts back to the posted speed limit. I agree with you, although it's an unpopular point of view. I think if you made it 20 all day long within the schools, so you don't have to worry about a sign saying an hour in the morning, hour in the afternoon, I agree it's much easier, but we would have to reapply to the state and request that to be approved.
If I could just add one thing, and I'm sorry, we are not unique in the sense that our efforts are different than other communities. For example, Milford is using exactly our program and exactly our speed limits and exactly the timeline, et cetera. So it's becoming a trend throughout the states. Again, this is a new program throughout the state of Connecticut. We're seeing what the benefits and non-benefits are to them. But again, as we monitor the program and see things that we see to be issues, we certainly will bring them forward for changes, et cetera. But yeah, we're trying to make it so that it's across the board. If we had guidance specifically for this from the state that said you shall do this at certain times at this and this and this, life would be much easier, no doubt. But we're doing it based upon what our community is doing, because again, we are unique, and we are a unique sense where we have 2 colleges and several high schools, or, 2 high schools and several regular schools, elementary schools, et cetera. And I think we have to base it on our community and not what the others are doing, because we're definitely different.
Fair enough, I get that. And cameras are not new to me. They've been around. I've experienced them in other states and other locations, so I get it. Thank you, though.
Thank you. Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. Hello, and thank you for coming this evening. I have a handful of rapid fire questions that we've been getting from constituents that I'm hoping to ask you. But before I do, I have a question for Madam Moderator.
Sure.
Hoping that we can enter this really helpful, easy to read highlights of the report in the backup for
Yeah.
the regular, because
It's already in there.
oh, great, because there's a lot of really helpful data here that shows how effective the program is in slowing traffic. So here are my rapid fire questions. We've been getting a lot of inquiries as to why speed cameras versus speed bumps. And so if there's anyone, either you or someone from the traffic authority, that can address that question as to why this is a better choice.
Yeah, I'd rather that come from either an engineering or public works or traffic authority standpoint.
We have both of them here. Who wants to field that question? Thank you. We've got Frank Batiste, Director of DPW, coming up.
Good evening.
Evening.
Frank Batiste, Director of Public Works. So speed humps and cameras are 2 different things. They're 2 different tools in the toolbox. They're not mutually exclusive. You can use them together or one or the other. The manual on uniform traffic control devices, or the MUTCD, does not have specific warrants for when to use speed humps. So we look at guidance from Federal Highway, DOT, IT, all these groups. So looking at these roads specifically, you typically wouldn't put speed humps on roads that have higher traffic volumes over 3,000 or 3,500. I think only one of these would fall in that category. We also look at roadway classification. So that's something FHWA, the Federal Highway Administration, classifies roads as a local road, a collector, arterial, or then you're into highways. So, the local roads feed into collectors, collectors feed into arterials, and then even within those categories of like collector, you have a major and a minor collector roadway. And the guidance out there typically is that speed humps are appropriate on local or minor collector roadways. All of these roadways, I'm going off the top of my head here, so don't quote me, but I think 2 of them are arterials. I think Jefferson and Mill Plain, and then all of the others are major collector roadways in that category. So they wouldn't be advisable to put speed humps there. That being said, I think there's other physical measures we can do on roadways. Like I said, these aren't mutually exclusive. You don't have to do one or the other. You can do them in conjunction. I think looking at things like raised crosswalks in front of the schools is a good idea, because then it's similar to a speed hump, but it's right at the point of where you're telling people to cross the road. So you're slowing traffic down right at that point. I think that's kind of what our thinking is here. And I mean, even on Mill Plain, we have the quick build projects with the delineators where we simulate bump outs at crosswalks. We're analyzing things like that as well as maybe using a raised crosswalk there instead of a bump out. So I think I kind of captured everything. But
No, that's very helpful. I think it's helpful for the public to understand that for different types of roadways, looking at how they serve cars getting from one place to another, that there are certain interventions that are inappropriate. And I know that seeing as we get a lot of complaints about congestion, I think we'd probably be trading one thing for another with that. My next question.
Questions?
I will. Next question that we've been getting a lot of is, and this one I think might be for another one of our participants, is about the funding and the money that comes in and an understanding. Bye, Frank.
Frank's out.
I would be helpful to have explained to both the RTM and the public how, I know that state statute requires that the funding is spent on very specific things, but if you could tell us how the town is making sure that those funds are properly allocated, that would be helpful.
Tom Harris, Chief Fiscal Officer for the town. The revenues are captured in its own, a separate department. We have a separate bank account for that, and we have identified expenses that will be used, and the funds will reimburse those expenses. Primarily right now, it's paving. And there are, on an annual basis, paving costs that would equal, certainly in terms of the past fiscal year, the revenues that we have recorded. And we would expect that there would be sufficient expenses going forward to offset those revenues.
So to confirm, these are not funds that are in the general fund, but they're in a very specific bank account being used for very specific
They
projects.
are in the general fund, but the expenses also are in the general fund. So the net is that, again, all of the revenues that are received will be used to fund qualifying expenses, which are paving kind of traffic safety costs.
Excellent, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Christine Vitale, First Select Person. In addition to paving and road infrastructure improvements, revenue can also be used to offset the cost of just running the program. And right now, we do have some HR costs for that. The hearing officer will be paid through the revenue. We have a clerk for the hearings that would be paid. We hired part-time employees to help with the review. They've been trained by the police department and the parking department. So those will also be tagged as an offset to the revenue that's generated. If we go surpass the budget, the revenue can be carried over from fiscal year to fiscal year and can be used to fund long-term infrastructure projects, but it has to be focused on road safety, and we do need to report that out to the state, so there is oversight on that. With it being in the general fund, it'll be part of the quarterly reporting to the Board of Finance, which adds an extra level of oversight as well. But as it was said, we're looking at this through enforcement, education, and engineering. So the revenue that's generated from this can be used for future engineering projects. Even when reporting out to the state, they're going to be asking us as part of the review process for the ATSD program, what other engineering tools are you using in these corridors in addition to the speed safety cameras? So as Mr. Petit said, on Mill Plain Road, looking at raised crosswalks, looking at, I know that we've also been looking at around Fairfield Ward with some of the survey results for the Safe Streets for All survey that went out to the community. So it's not just one thing. We're going to be looking at it from a lot of different avenues and using all tools that we can to keep our roads safer for all users.
Thank you.
And one of the expenses, there's a direct expense that's paid to the vendor. It's a cost per ticket that's paid to the vendor.
All right, other members, Representative Retzky.
Yeah, Ratsky, District 10. I'm wondering if you've seen a lot of license plate covers captured, like the kind where you can see the license plate number through the screen with your naked eye, but it might obscure it to a camera. And if those are illegal under state law, I guess, and what's being done about it.
Sure. So yes, it is illegal to obscure your plate in any way under section 14-18. And that effort is something that we potentially anticipated would happen. It is a violation of state law. So in combination of our educational efforts, along with our enforcement efforts with our traffic unit, that will be something that we will tackle. And we are tackling as we see them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Oh, Representative Hardigan.
A notification.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Representative Hardigan. They can't actually hear you online.
Am I still
There you go.
talking into a dead mic?
As long as the green light is on, you're good.
Sorry, it's my first day. Is there anything that you've seen that your group could not handle in-house that actually needs to be outsourced to another group?
As it relates specific to the speed camera program,
As it relates to setting up an automated camera that takes a picture of somebody when they're speeding and
sure,
sends it to a computer.
so certainly we can put officers in areas of speed concern. I think what the speed camera does is it puts it in an area all the time when we are able to focus on different areas.
I apologize. I'm talking about owning and operating the cameras yourself in-house.
Okay.
As opposed to an officer, the data, instead of going elsewhere, goes to something owned by the municipality.
It's a good question. I don't think so, but I have not researched that, so I don't know. Again, that would require, I think, a heavy resource as these companies are operating these types of things on a basis that is way higher than our police, and our police are smart. I'm not saying they're not smart, but they operate on a different level. And I think as technology advances, we definitely have to keep up with the technology as a law enforcement unit. But again, I don't know what it would cost or how we would even begin. I know that nobody in Connecticut, to my knowledge, is doing that, law enforcement wise.
But I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Have you seen anything that during this process where you're like, oh, no way, we can't, that they're launching rockets to, anything that's otherworldly to the police department?
I think all of our technology, all of our technology that we use from a police department's perspective is not created or nor run by us. It's always a vendor of some type that provides us with the technology, and we operate it as an end user. To be a digital creator or entrepreneur, to create that software, I don't have any officers to do that for sure. And again, I don't know of any company that hands the reins over to the police department to run once it's enacted.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a follow-up question, I think, for the captain. I'm sorry, I apologize. I didn't catch your last name.
Irizarry.
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 Irizarry? Irizarry.
Val.
I just want to make sure I understand the process for the appeal correctly. I believe you said the police department reviews the information, makes a determination, then a citation is issued. So at that point, there's police department involvement.
Police or town employee
Okay.
involvement.
And then for the appeal, the police department isn't involved in the appeal process at all.
No, sir.
But you had input or training involved in It's a question. I made it sound like I was leading you somewhere. Sorry. Did you have input, or were you training people for that position?
Training for the reviews of each violation, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Different from the appeal though. The training for the reviews of the violation is done by the vendor to an employee blessed by the police department. The appeals is done by a attorney with a clerk, and the attorney, separate and apart from the police department, does those reviews. Overseen by that traffic authority. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Wolk.
Hey, Jay Wolk, District 5. How you? Good to see you guys, especially you, first select person. And I won't keep you guys long in the J vortex. So to just bring up what Representative Georgiadis Drew was bringing up about data, because a lot of the letters I've been reading, data has been a big issue. So you mentioned, Chief Paris, that the license plates stay for a year in case there's another infraction. So after that year, the license plates all get erased for a second year?
That's correct. So at
Okay.
the conclusion of that 1 year time period from when the offender received their first violation, 1 year total, then that license plate is removed from the system.
Okay, all right, thanks. And also, just so you know, that West Point, if you drive in West Point, the speed limit's 5 miles an hour. Okay.
Thank you, Representative Wolk. So before we go, I see Representative Druniak, and then I'm sorry. I saw Druniak, Sayal, and then I have a list going of representatives who want to speak again.
Hi, Eric Druniak, District 6. Hello. I just wanted to follow up on that, the issue of deleting the data as they promised in their contract. Do you know whether other communities that have implemented programs like this, just, school programs?
Oh, I don't think people can hear you online.
Oh, is that better? Whether other communities have tried to get something in the contract that would maybe, make this be not just a trust issue, but rather maybe like a certification requirement where they're required to certify, say, every 30, 60 days or something that they have in fact deleted, or something along those lines, just so that, people who are concerned about the privacy, they're like, well, yeah, they promised to do it, but how do you know they actually are? So.
I can tell you that the answer for that question is a little bit outside of my realm.
Yeah.
I'm told that they are SOC compliant. I don't know any tech savvy or
What's
information
SOC,
security.
sorry?
SOC compliant and certified. They have SOC certifications.
SOC?
Again, I am not going to get into detail with that
But
because that's
maybe
way over my
Over
head.
this week, we could probably get some follow-up on that.
Yep.
What does that stand for?
It's all part of their security compliances that they have to have on hand. So I'm not a representative of Ultimate. I can only speak to the operational side of this.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
We will follow up, but I do believe that the company also has an outside auditor to make sure that they are complying with deleting data. But we will confirm that.
Great, thank you. And
This is
once,
an outside check, because as the chief said, it's hard for us to go. We have a signed contract. We're assuming that they're going to be following the contract language and Connecticut state statute. And an audit provision is part of that contract, but we will get a more definitive
that'd be great if
answer.
you could send that to me and I can distribute that to members, a confirmation of that process. Thank you. Representative Druniak, did you have other questions? Okay, thank you. Representative Sale.
Hi, Allison Seale, District 6. I have two questions kind of following up on things you've said based on our emails also. One about the data collection. Did you say something about that it was a year that they hold onto the license plate in case of another infraction, and then as long as it's been paid or appealed and let go, then it's deleted? And then what if it has not been paid? What if someone has an outstanding ticket?
I believe the vendor will keep that plate on file until the violation has been adjudicated.
Okay, so if someone is continuing to get tickets or they're unable to pay them, then their data is just on file, continuing to be stored.
On file with the vendor, correct? Not with the police department, with the vendor.
Okay. And is there any?
And it's just a plate number. I just wanted to be clear on that.
Okay. And okay. And then just about the signs, which I know is tricky because there are certain guidelines, but you were saying that there now are new signs possible, but we would have to go back. Is that something that you are interested in doing? I know that you said about flashing lights, but also there are other issues that we're hearing about as far as the wording and things like that, because right now it just says, photo enforced school hours and like the hour in the morning and the hour in the afternoon, which is misleading because we're only in school half the days of the year. And the cameras are on not just during those hours and not just during school days, but all the time, all the days. So would you guys support or be interested in making signs that people who didn't have, we all have the chart that says cameras are on all the time, every day, all day. This is the speed limit during these times. This is the speed limit other times. But for people that aren't looking and reading like we are, that are just seeing those signs.
I will say that every sign that you guys see posted at each of these school zones is what the state permitted us to hang.
Right, totally.
So
But you're
that's,
saying now that
that's
we
a
can.
little beyond our control. We can't change the signs without their blessing or authorization.
Yeah.
As far as the flashing lights, that flashing light is not to tell you that there is a speed camera in the area. It's to tell you when that reduced speed limit is in effect. So I do believe that'll be effective if the town decided to pursue that direction. If we go back to OSTA for any changes in the plan, whether it's flashing lights or not, at that point, the state will mandate us having to put those speed limit flashing signs with the reduced speed limit times.
Is that the only thing then that you were talking about that they are now offering that we don't have?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
you're
So
saying that we're grandfathered in?
sure, and that it brings up a great point. What I would, if the program were going to advance to further speed cameras, God help me. But if it does advance to more speed cameras, then I think it's only prudent of us to make sure we are in compliance, but two, we are consistent. Because I think our consistency throughout our enforcement education efforts are across the board. So if we were to make any changes, or if we were to add additional areas where the speed cameras will require those, I wouldn't want to abandon these and say, well, we were grandfathered in, we shouldn't put the flashing signs. We should be in compliance with everything in the town if we were going to advance it.
Right.
So yes, to answer your question, yes, we would support that to ensure that we are in compliance with the state and two, we're consistent.
Okay, so all wording would stay the same. The only thing has a potential for being changed or added is the flashing lights at reduced times.
Yes, that's the state's guidance
Right.
guidance as of this point. They haven't changed the like for it to change from a photo enforced to speed camera ahead, something like that. They haven't given that guidance yet. It's just what you see on the signage to be the approved signage by OSTA. Now, that's not to say that the state wouldn't change it. Especially with the state having this to be a new program, as we're making changes or suggesting changes, I would anticipate that the state also sees changes, which they've already done since the program started. So it's definitely possible, just up to the state at that point.
Okay, thank you.
One more point on that matter. I had put together a proposal for the FTA for a school zone that had markings outside of each of these school zones. And The way I've got away from having to go back to the state for that approval is to ensure that those markings are outside the designated school zones permitted by OSTA. So each of the schools, regardless of whether there's a speed camera or not, the FTA did approve to have roadway markings saying school zone ahead as an additional factor to help drivers become more aware that they're entering a school zone and to drive slower.
Thank you. I have Representative Rodriguez and then Representative Morgan.
Hi, Tracy Rodriguez, District 6. I have just a couple questions. I just want to clarify, I think you answered this, but in terms of changes, are you aware of any other besides the flashing lights or signage? Like, are there any other changes? Is that what you just answered? I just wanted to clarify that's what you meant. Okay, thank you. The second question was, you mentioned communications going out to some college age students and high school students, and I was just curious what that communication looked like. Like, more like, was it email, was it mail, was it a
It's
flyer?
a
Okay.
AI generated flyer.
Oh, boy.
That we're able to make it look pretty. So,
Informational flyer.
yeah.
And
we-
how do they see, like, is
We
it?
proactively did that, because we felt it, since it's a new program and the students coming back to school weren't used to this since its implementation, we felt as community partners, the best to push out something to the colleges and to the high schools to be proactive. Because again, we're not trying to trick anybody. We're trying to tell people where they are, and to slow down. So anything to make it more appealing to the eye, we created that one flyer so that it's on one page with a lot of information on it and not multiple. We do recognize people don't want to read a lot of data from us, but if we can make it look pretty on one page, hopefully that makes a little bit of a difference.
And thank you. And are these like posted around the school areas, or are they put in student mailboxes, or like where would they see the flyers?
I gave it to each of the public safety directors for each of the colleges and to the Board of Ed for distribution, so it'll be on them on how they distribute it.
On how they distribute it. Okay. I feel like we've gotten a lot of emails in around transparency and communication practices. So I think it's great that this is a proactive measure, and it's really nice to see. To see that. And then my last question is actually just around the school zones that you had brought up. So I was curious when that would be implemented. I think you mentioned the school zone ahead just now. Like, we've got an interesting area by Ward and McKinley where Ward has a speed camera, McKinley does not. Ward has the current school zone designation and McKinley does not, but I believe is in the works. But I have gotten messages from constituents that feel that it is unsafe that it says school zone ends for Ward when you're right about to approach McKinley. So I am just curious about how that area is being looked at in terms of safety and how this will be impacting, because you leave one and go immediately into another.
So I have an additional 9 school zone applications for reduced speed limits. I recognize that some of those speed limits or school zones are confusing. Ludlow Middle High runs adjacent to Tomlinson Middle School, so that is on that second list of 9, as well as McKinley and a number of other schools as well. So I kind of, my vision is to have that consistency, like the chief mentioned, in all of our school zones with reduced speed limits. Not to say that they will each receive cameras, but at least keep a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit within those school zones in the morning and in the afternoon.
Yeah, I'm fully in support of that reduced speed without the cameras. I was curious in terms of that distance from schools, like how would that look between the McKinley and Ward on that Naps Highway area? Like, would it say school zone end, school zone begin, or would it just
Correct.
be school zone?
Well,
Continues?
that would be up to OSTA to determine whether
Okay.
there's going to be a break between the 2 school zones or a continuation.
Okay.
But that would be their approval.
And do you have any thoughts on the timeline? Like, because it currently, and it has for quite a while, said school zone ends right before McKinley starts. Do you have any thoughts on timeline when that might be
The
looked
9,
into?
the 9 additional school zones that we have proposed, OSTA did send back a draft requiring some revisions to each of those, and those were related to the FTA. So it's in the FTA's hands now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Representative Morgan.
Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan, District 9. I have a question. It's sort of a two-part question, so hopefully I can ask it succinctly and be respectful of all of our time. The first is about the notion of the tickets going to the owner of the vehicle rather than the driver. My understanding had always been that moving violations go to a driver as opposed to like a parking ticket, you know, whoever owns the car, like too bad for you that you lent your car to someone who parked it illegally or whatever. But so I wondered sort of if there's like a due process issue with that and these speed cameras. So that's, I wondered if you could maybe talk about that a little bit. And then sort of a corollary to that, and this may be purely in the hands of the vendor, so maybe outside of what you know, but you know, when the tickets come in the mail, they come to the owner of the car, not the person who is necessarily driving. And I have some concerns about the privacy implications of that too. You know, the timestamp, the photograph of the person driving. So I guess it's sort of the umbrella topic is the citation going to the owner of the car rather than the driver, and then both from a privacy perspective and a due process perspective. Thanks.
So the ticket going to the owner, since this project and program was implemented for the state of Connecticut, state law says that that would be going to the owner. It's state law, not something that we kind of decide. There is certain statutes in the state of Connecticut that talks about criminal liability based upon you being the owner of the vehicle. But this specific statute speaks about the owner of the vehicle receiving the violations as it relates to speed enforcement by camera. And the second part of the question?
It was just about may not again be in your purview. It sounds like the vendor would probably be controlling this, but you know, when the citations come, they're addressed to the owner of the vehicle.
Oh, sure.
And then inside is a photograph of the driver with a specific time
Sure.
stamp and photograph. And I have some, especially regarding like victims of domestic violence and coercive relationships, some real concerns about that.
Sure. Yeah, so the camera does not capture the picture of the driver. It's not sophisticated enough to zoom into the driver of the vehicle. There's one thing to be cautious of your concern, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't be concerned. I get your concern. But if you don't commit a violation, your car is not scanned and time stamped. It's only if you commit a violation. So if you're speeding, then it's scanned and time stamped. If you're driving the speed limit, the system does not pick up your vehicle. Yeah. Okay, got it.
Thank you. Representative Jacobs. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Morgan, were you finished? Oh, Representative Morgan, I just wanted to make sure if you were finished.
Sorry, yes.
That's okay. No problem. And Representative Jacobs.
Richard Jacobs, District 8. With the data storage, do you know physically where it's being stored? Is it going to be in Connecticut, in the United States, or out of the country? Do you know where they actually store the data?
I know that the company is based out of Maryland or Virginia.
And that might be something we can get answered as well
Yep.
this week. Thank you. Other
From,
members?
from my knowledge, and it's not very sophisticated as to where it's stored, but I know it's cloud data. So if it's stored on the cloud, I don't know if there's a physical location for it. But again, I could be speaking wrong. It's for the company to answer.
And a follow-up, if it's stored outside of the state where it's stored, are they required to follow state law?
Again, I would imagine that they would have to follow state law. We are giving them the contract to follow state law, and this is our guidance as it relates to Connecticut state law. So I can't envision them following another state's law as it relates to data storage, especially if it's a Connecticut law that requires them to delete after a certain time. Again, I don't have the knowledge of where the data is stored, how it's done, et cetera. As the captain mentioned, they do have security requirements to comply with. But I don't have that direct knowledge. Again, that's something we could find out for you for sure.
Yeah, we have a list going of things that might need some follow-up. Thank you. Other members in person with first questions? Okay, what we're going to do then is we're going to move to members online, and then we'll come back to in person who have second questions. And so in my order that I have for online, I have Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Chief Paris and Captain Irizarry for all you're doing to keep our roads in our town safe. Appreciate you being here tonight. It's been great to see all the feedback, both good and bad, and there has been a lot of good that I don't think gets talked about as well about the speed camera system. The big concern, at least that I'm seeing from District 2, is privacy, which a lot of other representatives have mentioned, data security, and as far as I'm aware, other municipalities have been able to hire independent privacy auditors, auditing firms. Is that something? My question is that something that the town would look into? Is potentially hiring an independent third party privacy auditing firm just to put everybody's mind at ease that the data is being deleted, especially if it's outside of the state. I understand the Connecticut state law says under 30 days, but if it's in the cloud somewhere, right, in a different state, personally, I think that could go a long way to kind of mitigate people's fears of, oh my God, what's happening to our data, and how do we know if the company is actually following through on this? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. I definitely would support that. I think that it's only prudent of us to ensure that we are putting vendors and programs out there that are trustworthy and proven to be trustworthy by our town and police department. So I certainly would support that if it's the practice that should be done and guided by our town attorney. We take a lot of our guidance by the town attorney as to what we should be doing as it relates to contract, et cetera. But as a person, I 1000% support to ensure that data is deleted if we tell it to be deleted, and we have somebody to say we assured that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Longo.
Hi, Melissa Longo, District 1. I have many questions. So, Margaret, I guess feel free to cut me off when necessary. So my first question goes back to the very beginning from what you were all speaking about with the 3-year window that was being monitored and how our town has changed. So I'm wondering how much in that 3-year time period and that 3-year window that there was monitoring that was done in our school zones, how much has the population in Fairfield changed between that 3-year time period and when this was implemented?
I'm sorry, you're asking what the population change was during
Yes.
that 3-year time period?
Has our population grown in the last 3 years? Has it been pretty steady? Is it similar? If you're gonna be comparing from 1 year to 3 years, just curious to see if throughout those 3 years, if our population has remained steady or if we have gone up.
I don't have an answer to that, Melissa. I apologize. But I can't speak to as far as the citations and residents versus non-residents, because that's the factual data I have in front of me. But I cannot speak to population growth in the town of Fairfield within 3
We
years.
can get that information this week.
Okay, that would be very helpful, just, to be able to contrast and compare. My next question is about the data and how it's being stored. I know a bunch of fellow RTM members have asked some questions, and my question is, when we were looking at this a few years ago before it was approved, many of us had concerns, which I think we still do, and I feel it's very valid, that the company that we're using is out of state. Yes, they are aware of our laws, they are aware of the statutes, and we're entrusting them to essentially do the right thing. I just have the word cloud in my mind just sent off a red flag because we
just
don't
want to
know.
focus on questions. I'm sorry, Representative Longo. We're not commentary at our informational meetings.
Oh no, I'm just asking how we know that. I know we talked about having someone maybe figure out how to monitor that cloud situation, and how, if Chief Paris, if you guys know, or if this is to the person who's collecting the data and at Altuit, how that is stored and deleted, and do we have a process of someone that we know that's going to be checking on from the state whether or not that's been deleted? Like, do they audit it every year, or is it every 2 years? Do we know that information?
So yeah, Melissa, I definitely would support, if there is not being done already, an auditor from the town of Fairfield specific from our town to ensure that it's deleted as requested. But again, as we provide them state law to have them actually remove it, I don't have the answer as of this point as to exactly how they delete it. I do know we do give that order, but I would definitely support, especially for, if the funding is coming from the program, why would we not, triple check it to ensure that we have an auditor from the town saying that this is deleted and this is how you do it. I would definitely support that, and it's a great idea.
Okay, thank you. That's, giving me, and I'm sure many other people who are listening, peace of mind, because this is a fluid thing. My other question was about, I know that we had discussed the signs, and that Mr. Patisse had said that in certain areas, the speed humps are just not feasible for the amount of traffic that goes through certain school areas. My concern is that the signage, as well as, especially on Mill Plain, 30 miles an hour, and then it goes down to, the signage of just during school hours. Is there a possibility that we can, and do you see this in the future, really implementing it for what it was this ordinance was originated for, which is during school hours, during school time specifically, and if there are flashing signs, or just even more of a reflection on our stop signs to give people a little bit more notice, especially those who don't travel very often in Fairfield. Obviously in town we know, but for those who are visiting, or who are visiting college friends, things like that.
Sure. So, I could understand the concern for the differences in speed limits and how it could be confusing. No doubt about it. Would I like to see a consistent speed limit on the roadways so that it's constantly known this is the speed limit? Yes. As it relates to the enforcement, though, Melissa, I really, as I said to before, I have a hard time as chief saying we should enforce the speed limit signs only certain hours, because it goes against my grain as a police officer to enforce laws all the time, and I don't want to get into that practice where I'm most saying, hey, it's okay at this time for this thing to violate the law, but it's not okay in this area at this time to violate the area. I just don't want to get into that practice. I think it's a bad practice for a police chief, especially to get involved in, but definitely our police officers in general. As you see confusion coming from the public, I do see also what our officers are trying to enforce. I want them to be consistent about their enforcement efforts also.
Of course, absolutely. And that's, I think, part of the confusion is if we know that during the hours of 7:30 and 8:45 during drop off time, you cannot go over 20 miles an hour. And then the speed limit goes back to the 25 miles an hour anyway, because that's just what the speed limit should be. I guess that's kind of what I was more speaking to. Just so that, okay, we really, really need to slow down and be careful for the safety of our students and our walkers. 20 miles an hour, that's it. Don't go above it during
Your
those
question is,
hours.
please, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Representative Longo, but we want to stay focused on the questions.
Yes, that was just really my question, is would that be considered, and would the state consider that as well, as far as you know?
Sure, I would, as a police department representative, support anything that is not confusing to the public. So if that involves making the speed limit consistent, I just want to also just remind ourselves, including myself, of why the 20 miles per hour was enacted, because of the Vision Zero guidance that talks about your level of survivability based upon certain speed limits. Now, again, I know it's difficult to travel 20 miles per hour, especially in 2026. I'm not ignorant to that fact, but I do recognize that consistency on top of education will help those efforts. So if speed limits are different across the board, like for example, Mill Plain Road and Burr Street kind of run into each other, they may be able to have a consistent speed limit would be a preference of mine for sure.
Okay, and one more question, I'm sorry. So I know that the state has given us guidelines as to what we need to be following at their recommendation. Um, is there anything within those guidelines that Fairfield has chosen to do in addition to what the state is asking? Or are we following specifically what they are saying, considering that this company is not in Connecticut, that we can have a little bit of wiggle room with what signage we play around with, and just see kind of monitoring which methods of enforcement might be better?
I'm hopeful that the school zone ahead markings would alleviate a lot of concerns, whether operators of vehicles know they are approaching a school zone or not. I think if we keep that consistency throughout the town of Fairfield with every school, that could alleviate some of the signage confusion about being in a school zone. I don't know if that's what the answer you're looking for.
One thing, Melissa, I think what you're saying is, do we do anything above and beyond what is required as a baseline from the state? And the answer is yes. When Captain Irizarry put in the proposal to put school zone ahead pavement markings, that's not what we are required to do by the state. It's an addition. And again, that is ahead of the area, because we have to be cognizant of the fact that we are doing things in line with OSTA's approvals. So we're not doing anything to change what their guidance is. We're doing something addition prior to the areas to give the drivers an indication that they're entering a school zone.
Right. So you're specifically making it like for our town and our purposes, which I love. One last question is for our next meeting, is it possible, Madam Moderator, I'm not sure if this is a question to you or Select Person Vitale, or Chief Paris, can we have a representative from the monitoring, from the speed cameras give us, maybe they can give us some time and be available for our next meeting since we are voting on a different item? I'm not sure if that's possible. I know we have a lot of questions and we want some feedback. I just wasn't sure if that had been floated or not. And if it has, my apologies for being repetitive.
Just to clarify, do you mean from the vendor Ultimate?
Yes.
Okay, I'll defer to First Select Person Vitale on that.
Yeah, we can reach out to them to see if they'll be available to that. And while I have you, our CFO did a quick search, and according to worldpopulationreview.com, the population of Fairfield in 2023 was 64,379, and it jumped to 66,262 in 2025. So roughly 2,000 population growth.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And thank you for all of your time and all of your efforts.
Thank you. Representative Niffen, I just wanted to confirm, I believe you said your question had been answered? Oh, you're on.
Yes, thank you.
It is-
It was answered. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. Representative Dodge.
Hi, Ashby Dodge, District 3. I just had a question going back to the signage, in terms of, I hear a lot of that there's going to be new sign, we're in support of new signs that could go before or after the school zone, and consistent speed limits and all of that. But how do you reconcile the current signs that are up that are incorrectly reflecting the times that folks are being held accountable, I guess, via the cameras for? So if it's saying these school zones during these times, we're getting a ton of emails about how that's not actually correct because they're being monitored and ticketed 24/7. So is there any way to reconcile that? And do you all have a plan to roll out currently signs that are incorrect or that are correct for the incorrect ones?
There are no incorrect signs posted at any of the speed limit reductions or school zones with camera. Every sign posted is OSTA approved, and those are the signs we are utilizing now. So I'm not quite sure or certain what you mean by incorrect signage.
Sure. I guess I see current signs that say this speed limit you're being held accountable for is between hours of 7 and 8 and 2 and 3 and all of that. But I think I heard you say earlier that they're actually being ticketed for 24/7 during that roadway.
For the posted speed limit outside of that 20 mile an hour speed limit reduction, yes.
And maybe Captain Irizarry, can you just clarify again that the issue of the speed limit changes during those times?
Correct. So the speed limit reduction, again, is for the hour in the morning and hour in the afternoon where pickup and drop-offs are prevalent. Every school's different, so that's why we had to have different signs for different schools. It's all dependent on their start and end times. Outside of that 1 hour in the morning and hour in the afternoon, the speed limit is enforced at the regularly posted speed limit.
And so I think maybe just to clarify, there the level of when the infraction occurs is different depending on the posted hour. It is that during those school zone hours, the infraction occurs at 10 miles above 20 miles an hour. At other times, the infraction occurs at 10 miles above the normal 25 or 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, that you're absolutely correct. The 25-mile-an-hour speed limit that is outside of the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit has a photo enforced sign. So that basically says you're being photo enforced at a 25 miles per hour. And then when you approach the 20 miles per hour sign, it has the informational sign below it with the hours that says photo enforced. So that indicates and is indicative of when those hours are, operational for the 20 miles per hour. So there are two there, 25 miles per hour prior to with photo enforced, and then 20 miles per hour again with photo enforced, but there's also an informational signage underneath it that has hours.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your clarification.
Thank you. Representative Treshik.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Eric Trushik, District 9, and several questions. One of the speakers just recently mentioned the idea that we'll be putting in additional pavement markings prior to the enforcement zones. When will those be installed?
Work orders have been generated, and I believe the vendor and Department of Public Works is working on the town line for implementation. I kind of drafted that proposal in a rapid manner with the hopes of having those pavement markings done prior to the start of the school year. But I believe there were some timing conflicts with the vendor. But I am hopeful still that we're at least close to the start of the school year for implementation.
Thank you. And then a very specific question around Ludlow, both high school and middle. It seems to be different, but this may be applicable. For example, Representative Barriga has talked about Ward and McKinley being close to each other, so there may be situations similar in other areas. But if someone is traveling eastbound or westbound and going through both, is that considered two different sections? For example, going past high school, then stop sign, hopefully they stop, then they go again through the middle. If they actually exceed the speed limit by 11 or more miles per hour in each of those, do they get two tickets or two citations or only one?
That's correct. It's two citations, and
Okay.
you said the magic word there is separated by a stop sign. So there's two separate
Okay.
school zones, one at one at Ludlow High and one at Ludlow Middle. And it's a bifurcated intersection, so it's divided by a stop sign. So there is a possibility of receiving two citations, one at Ludlow High and one at Ludlow Middle.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. And then one last question. I think I know the answer, but Chief Harris, I wanted to push on this a little bit, and I absolutely recognize and respect your professional opinion that you do not recommend that we consider enforcing speed limits only certain times. But I do want to understand if that is a choice we could make as a town, or is that something, no, we are not allowed to enforce it only, for example, during school drop off and pickup hours, or only during a window of when kids are likely to be at school?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it because it is just a law enforcement choice from our opinion. Of course, the town and the RTM can make a decision for the cameras to enforce at certain points and not. I'm just giving you from a chief standpoint, what I believe we should be doing just because of the consistency and what we do as a law enforcement unit. But most certainly, the town can make those adjustments and have the cameras enforce, as they feel fit. Sure.
Thank you, Chief. And I do definitely respect your professional opinion there, and I think it's very valuable. But thank you for clarifying that. That's all my questions, Madam Moderator. Thank you for your
Great.
time.
Thank you.
I just want to add one more thing to that comment. So July 4th of 2020, there was a victim on Reading Road from a motor vehicle accident, and that was related to speed as well as other situations. So just keep that in mind. That happened at 7:42 p.m. On June 23rd, 2023, a second victim on Reading Road. This was June, after school, had let out at 2:54 p.m. So the school year was over. As the chief alluded to Jefferson Street, September 29th, 2023, that was at 5 minutes after midnight, and speed was definitely a factor. So I urge you to consider those 3 tragedies. There are many, but just those 3 when you're deciding when we should be enforcing that speed limit or not. Because that's one of the things that I had to take into consideration, as well as what the chief said. We enforce the law 24/7. It doesn't matter. The school zone is a school zone, whether kids are in that school or not.
Thank you.
Thank you for the additional information. I do really appreciate that.
Thank you. Chief Paris, did you have anything? Okay. So I think we have answered the questions from members online. I have a list going of members in person who have second questions. Before I do that, is there any, oh, I was just going to say members in person who have first questions. Representative Barrett.
Steve Barrett, District 7. This is probably a question for our first select person or our CFO. Would, as to kind of piggyback onto Representative Larson's comment of getting an independent auditor, would the cost of that independent auditor be a legitimate expense that can be used with the money that's received through this program?
I would say yes, but we would probably want to check with OSTA just to make sure. But I'm just going back to look at the presentation. The SOC2, System and Organization Controls 2, Cybersecurity Compliance Audit, that's what ultimate, I'm just looking at the presentation that they gave, the information meeting that they do to make sure they're in compliance with data retention and when they're deleting it. But we can get some follow-up information on that.
That'd be
as
great.
well.
Thank you.
And so certainly having, we don't want to, have our own person could perhaps be used with the same funds that are coming in.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
I think it's prudent of us to do so, not just rely upon the company to tell us that they did. I know that we can ask for the certification that it was deleted. So whatever that mannerism is from them to provide to us, I think we do that. And then I do agree. I think that it's important for us to show that we are not any other community and we're not going to just permit a generic. We want more guidelines into it. So I would definitely be supportive of that.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. And I think that they need to require per our contract that it's certified that they are deleting it and they are complying with state statute and what we're asking for them. So we will definitely follow up with that and would support it. And I would think that it would be able to use some funds if there was an extra cost with needing to do, going above and beyond what they are already doing. But as I said, I do believe they're already using an outside auditor as well, that we can get certification from that as a follow-up.
Great. Thank you. Any other members in person who have not yet asked first questions? Okay. So I have a list that I'm going to go back to of members that have second questions. Oh, was that? Okay. And so I have a list. Yep.
Yeah, we're good.
I've got a list going. It's totally possible that since these names have been on the list for a while, your questions may have been answered, but we'll go through it. I have Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 5. This is a follow-up on all of the data privacy questions and comments. One of the other things that was written to us from constituents was like potential liability for data breach. And so I'm wondering if it makes sense, like while we're going through the re-review of data privacy, just to ensure that, there's compliance and that information's being erased. I think the other thing that members of the public have brought up a few times in correspondence that we've received is I think we want to confirm where liability rests if there's a data breach, and that it would, the liability would rest with the vendor and not with us. So if that could be added to the list of questions, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we concur, especially being in law enforcement, seeing data breach things often. I think it's only prudent of us to ensure that we are keeping tabs on that, and that we as a town are holding them accountable for that, for sure.
Thank you.
All right, Representative Barron.
Okay. Hello, Emma Barron, District 6. I have a few questions that I hope are going to be rapid fire, but there's sort of questions that I just really want to get on the record, straightforward, simple answers for constituents that maybe are confused or tuning in for the first time. And so my first question is, what is the difference between the speed cameras and the automated license plate readers? Also sometimes called Flock or Axon.
Sure. So the difference is the speed cameras, the ATESD program is a speed camera designed for speed of vehicles. The license plate reader system, you should know, and you do know this already. When I became chief, we noticed lots of talk regarding the Flock system. And it had been an issue that has been arisen on a consistent basis. And since we have been using Axon for years, we have a company that's trusted with our information that we've been using forever. So I wanted to be consistent in the fact that we are using one software vendor for all of this, and we switched from Flock to Axon. Our Flock contracts are ended. So the license plate reader system that we have in town is a system that is used for law enforcement purposes only, guided by our officers' direct criminal investigations. And that is specific. It's important to note that our officers are held accountable for all of their use. They're documented via file numbers, et cetera. And all of those things are being used for criminal justice purposes. So crime tracking. If you're committing a crime in the town of Fairfield, we want to know those violators that are here.
Just to confirm, those are separate cameras
correct.
than the speed cameras.
That's correct. They're separate.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then another question that I think we have received a lot is this broader question, and I do think you might have already answered it, but again, just trying to get it here and now, is how is this program about children's safety if the speed cameras are operating 24/7, 365, and not only within the school year or the hours that school is in operation?
So I'll say this. We are always concerned about children's safety, whether they're in school or not. And I think that when we are separating this to say we are enforcing during school hours, that's a high probability that children are going to be there. But there's also opportunities for children to be at schools during off hours. So I think that's why we are consistently trying to enforce the effort so that it's not just when kids are there during school, it's during the off hours of school and et cetera.
And I concur with that and support the 24/7 hour enforcement for just changing driver behavior. And having had 3 children go through school and been there at all hours, day and night, kids are there early in the morning for practice. Kids are there after school for plays, for sporting events. They're there in the summer for summer camps. They're there in the evenings riding their bikes. They're there on the weekends for sporting events. They're just going to the playground, or if they just want to hang out at all hours. Like it or not, very often school grounds is where they end up. They're a place where kids congregate, and I think that we need to be consistent in enforcing the law in those areas especially. And having heard from parents for many years, having served on the Board of Education, keeping our schools even safer and more walkable. We heard from parents, I wish I could walk my kids to school. There's not sidewalks, everybody's speeding, there's no crosswalks. And we've been really proactive in looking at our streets to make them safer for all users, but especially our children around our schools. And we're doing that through this program, through our traffic unit. Our police officers are out there, and having these speed cameras frees up our officers to be focused on other areas of law enforcement and other high traffic areas that are also seeing speeding and crashes that may not be eligible for automated enforcement. Just one tool in the toolbox.
And then sort of related, I know a lot of people also are interested in the fact that there maybe has not been a fatality in these exact school districts. So another question that I just want to get out there and ask on behalf of others is recently got an email from a constituent, and I just think that this phrasing is maybe going to help in the answer. Is they asked, are we creating problems because there is currently maybe no compelling necessity for the cameras because there has not been a fatality? And so I just look to you for your response on that.
That's one of my favorite questions.
See, I knew,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
I wanted to have this moment
Thank
with you.
No, thanks for the question. So my response to that is simple. I am not going to wait for a child to die before we do enforcement or take extra measures in increasing traffic safety. To me, one child dies, it's too late. So to answer your question, yeah, that's my approach. I am not going to wait till there is a fatality or there was a near multiple fatality over by Notre Dame High School and Jefferson Street. But I'm not going to let that happen again under my watch.
And while not a fatality, we had a high school student who left during the day, high speed, critically injured, life changed forever. So totally support and very sad about Captain Irizarry leaving because his passion for just keeping our children safe, especially around our schools, is something to be admired. And I want to thank him on behalf of our community while I have this public opportunity before he's gone.
Thank you. And my last question. My last question is just asking if you can explain the revenue generated from this program versus a ticket handed out by an officer. From how I've understood it, is that tickets, I may be so wrong, but that ticket revenue might go back at least partially or fully to the state, whereas the revenue generated from this program goes back right to the town. And so the program funds itself rather than us potentially having to increase tax revenue from constituents.
So you're right. State fines go back to the state. I don't know the percentage that the town gets. I think it's very, very small. With the ordinance violation, everything outside of the administrative fees comes back to the town for traffic safety infrastructure.
I'll just add this. So when we enforce speed limits outside of the speed automatic speed enforcement cameras, the speed limits are set by the state. The violations over, so 1 mile per hour and over, et cetera, have different. They have a chart that we follow issued by the state. It's much higher than the $65 violation. It's in the hundreds, and if you are it's 200 something around there. If you are in the school zone and you violate it, it's double. So the number is much higher than what is being charged by the automatic cameras. So the officers, and we've been doing that for years. We've been enforcing school zones for years by our officers, and the numbers issued. The revenue number is issued by the state. Again, I don't know the number. It's issued on a chart we have in our cars. And then if you are in a school zone, the fine is doubled. And if you're in a school zone and a work zone, the fine is tripled. So, but this doesn't do that. It's just that one flat number in the automatic number.
And that state fine, it does not matter if children are in school or if there are construction workers on the road in a construction zone. It's still a school zone or it's still a construction zone with fines doubled.
And with the revenue from the speed cameras coming directly to Fairfield, every dollar, we appreciate that this is generating revenue. Well, I think our hope is that ultimately it won't. We're being realistic that for at least the beginning it is, and we wanted to be responsible and transparent and account for that. Putting it in the operating budget, knowing that there's an expense to offset that, enabled us to be transparent and also help reduce the tax burden, especially this year, which was a very, very tough budget year, knowing that we have 2.9, I think is the number for fiscal year 27. It was 1.1 for fiscal year 26. And as the CFO reported, we've identified operating expenses that can offset that revenue. If we didn't have that revenue, either things potentially would not get done, or we would have to potentially increase taxes in order to fund that.
And so just to clarify, sorry, last point.
No, you're fine.
If the funds, because I do know that there has been a concern about the funds being listed in, or the revenue being listed in the general fund. And so just to clarify, that was maybe a matter of transparency. I'm framing that as a question, not a comment. And if they weren't in the general fund, how do you see that impacting the funds?
If they weren't in the general fund, they wouldn't be, the operating expense, there wouldn't be the offsetting operating expenses. It could be used for another road safety improvement project, but it wouldn't necessarily be reported out the same way that we do with their operating budgets to the Board of Finance. And we're always looking, to ease the tax burden while we can. This was not a revenue generator, but just being realistic that we wanted it to be accounted for, and we wanted it to be clear where the money was going and how it was being used. And having it in the general fund is one of the easiest ways to do that we need to report out to all boards. And as reported earlier, the revenue and expenses need to be reported out to the state.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Representative Georgiadis. Nope, you're good. Okay. Representative Britton.
Peter Britton, District 1. I'm looking at these numbers here, Chief, and seeing these dramatic decreases, which is certainly very encouraging.
And I'm not sure they can hear you online, Representative Britton.
Sorry. These numbers, do you see them continuing to decline? What do you think would be an ongoing rate? As I'm looking at 887, as a number here. Do you expect that to decline quickly again, or where do you see that going?
If I could look into a crystal ball, Representative, I'd say, yeah, they're going to stay at 880 or drop even more. That's my hope, and that's my goal. My goal as a traffic safety boss is to make the town zero money, because that means our roads are safe. So I wish I could say, in the affirmative that number is going to drop, but only time will tell.
Thank you. Representative Carson.
Laura Carson, District 4. How are we able to make the school drop-off hours not be enforced during the summer without going to, we didn't go to OSTR, it was done very quickly. So how are we able to do that?
So the contract was read by the town attorney, who said that during the school hours, during school times, it shall be enforced. I shouldn't say a contract. The ordinance was read by the town attorney, reading that it should be enforced during school times and school hours, and didn't say that they should be when they're not there. So I think that's why the 20 miles per hour
So it was left open-ended and they were able to suspend it for the summer.
That's
And-
correct. I think the interpretation was that when the school was not in session, the 20 miles per hour would not be in effect.
And
That
when
was the
does-
interpretation by
sorry.
the town attorney. No, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And when does it go back into effect?
September 1st, when the school.
And you'll put something out about to remind people?
Of course, yes. Yeah, we have.
Also,
Just go 25 miles per
Oh.
hour and you'll be safe. Or 29 miles per hour and you'll be
29
safe.
is fine. I saw a thing on someone has mentioned this online that they lease their car, so the tickets go to their leasing company, and they've been very slow to get their violations, and I guess they even lapse past the appeals if they so choose to do that. Is there any way we can make that a better system, more efficient, where the leasing company sends it faster to the people so that they're not left hanging with all these? Someone said they got like $500 at one time because they were so backed up getting them, and they missed the appeals if they wanted to. So I was just wondering if there's anything we could do about that.
Yeah, the vendor has made an adjustment to allow the appeals to go through if the time has elapsed. outside due to a leasing company not releasing that information.
And one more question. The paving markers that you said, they're just going to be in the speed cameras school zones, or they're going to be all schools?
All
Oh,
schools
good.
and outside of the school zone.
Right, I think that's a great idea, just for everybody to slow down. Thank you.
And if I could just add one thing, I'm reading the ultimate contract, and section 19, subsection B says that Ultimate will provide the town with written notice by December 31st of each year that such records have been destroyed in accordance with this subsection. Just as it relates back to the
Data.
data
That's
retention.
helpful.
And again, I do think, although they have that guideline in there, why would we not have our own auditor to ensure, if that's even possible?
Thank you. Representative Carson, were you good? All right, Representative McCabe.
Michelle McCabe, District 4. Had a question about the second offense. Who determined that it's a year? So a year before you get back to 0 again? Is that state statute? I know that's not in our ordinance.
No, it's all part of the state statute, ma'am.
It is part of the state statute.
Correct.
It's a bummer. And last question, can you, have you noticed a difference in more of a townwide, in terms of speeding, in terms of how you all are conducting business and deploying offers? Like, if you could reflect on maybe if there's a ripple effect of these cameras that might exist outside of the report, I think it would be really helpful to hear about that.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm usually a little late for work every day, every morning, because I make it a point to drive through every school zone that has speed cameras. And I am not driving a marked police car when I do that. It's important to note that. I have a civilian-looking police car, and I do that on purpose. I do that to just get a gauge on what traffic is doing, not only within those school zones, but outside of those school zones as well. And the increase that I have noticed in traffic safety, driving an unmarked civilian-looking vehicle until someone gets on my bumper, then they realize it's a police car. Outside of that, I have noticed a dramatic increase in driver awareness and people slowing down. It has been a tremendous impact with the speed cameras and the community education and the stance that this town has taken in implementing this project. You know, we do get those complaints, oh, they're not going through the school zones, they're going outside of school zones. That's fine. I have 4 very eager traffic safety officers that are going to tackle those issues as those reports come in.
Thank you. Was that?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, Representative Waldron.
Thought it was on, sorry. Cindy Waldron, District 3. I have a couple of questions that are actually not related at all.
Representative Waldron, you're killing me.
What did I do
They gotta be
now?
related.
They are to the topic, but they're different.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay. Like they make no sense together is what I'm saying. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm jet lagged. No, I'm just kidding. So the first one is I wanted to go back to a comment that was made about if pictures are grainy, they're thrown out. I just wanted to touch on that, like checks and balances, so to speak. Is it just one person that's reviewing them or is it several? And I'm sorry if you've mentioned it, I apologize.
No, I didn't mention it. Don't apologize. So we have right now our parking department employees that have been trained and certified, and Human Resources has also hired an additional 2 or 3 employees that are reviewers that are trained and certified as well. And there are checks and balances. I do have my ATSD administrator, Ms. Karoglian, going over each of those rejections to ensure that they are being rejected for the right reasons.
Follow up on that. On the flip side, is it also checking to make sure they really are infractions? Does that make sense? Am I saying it the right way?
So
Like not just the rejections, but like sometimes if, you know, someone got a notice, an infraction, then they're like, well, I really wasn't doing it.
Sure. So yeah, I think there's multiple layers of
Okay.
investigation as to what it's done to the speed. So the camera system shows the violation, then an ultimate employee reviews the violation,
Mhm.
or vice versa. The Fairfield employee reviews the violation, the ultimate employee confirms the violation, and other way around. Sorry, I don't mean to confuse everybody. So the camera system, the ultimate employee, then the Fairfield employee. So we have multiple layers that are reviewing them.
Okay.
It's not just one. And then
Okay.
in Fairfield, we specifically have that extra layer of why were items rejected. We have our own employee doing that double check as to why they were. That's something that we do, that we enacted specifically.
Okay,
Because we don't want
wonderful.
people to just reject it and it be a
Right.
mistake, or et cetera.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate clarification. And my next question is, I have received some comments and questions regarding there are more speed cameras in town than not, because there's some confusion, and I'm not going to be privy, I won't know the technical term, so I'm sorry. There are certain locations where I assume you're checking speed limits and not tracking them to give you a ticket, but just to see, or, and those to people are speed cameras. And I'm like, no, 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 but they pop up on Waze as a speed camera. So I think there's this confusion about
Yeah,
this.
sure. Sure. So the only other tool that we have are speed feedback signs that flash the speed you
Right.
are driving. That does record speed, but that's all
That's
that
it.
it records. So that does generate data, which we utilize for enforcement purposes. After we remove the sign, we know what times are more prevalent speeding times throughout the week within those areas. And I believe we're up to 8 digital speed feedback signs now.
Okay, but that's all they're doing is
That's it.
just the speed,
Correct.
not any license plate reading
Correct.
or anything like that.
They do not have that technology on the
Okay.
signs.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you. Representative Georgiadis.
Through Georgia's District 9, follow up on my own question and a couple other questions. In regards to the speed cameras that are shown on Waze, the state has put cameras into town, right? So there's state cameras and the municipal cameras, or they're only Fairfield cameras, like on Black Rock Turnpike? Those,
Yeah, the Fairfield Police Department are the only, is the only, or the town of Fairfield is the only entity that put in speed cameras.
any cameras in town?
Speed cameras. So we do have the license plate reader cameras that are not speed cameras.
Right, but does the state have any kind of cameras?
No, they would notify us and the community if the state put ones. Now, the state does have the ability to put temporary work zone speed cameras, or at least did before the governor made a request for a review. I don't know if the state is continuing to put those mobile ones out. If you see them on the highway, those are mobile ones. And then when the state does work in certain towns, they do have those with them, but they will notify the municipality prior to them enacting these temporary mobile speed cameras.
Okay, thank you. And to follow up on my previous question, I brought my violation. And if you said just recently that I have a leased car, this came after the appeals allowance, 10 days after the violation. Are you going to change this letter so that you said the vendor is going to give people a larger window of time to appeal? Will that be reflected in the fabulous letter that we receive?
I don't believe it would be feasible to change the letter because that letter is processed and sent to all the violators. So to set up programming for one letter versus another might not be feasible. If someone like your situation has a ticket in hand and you have, because the vehicle was leased and you've extended that time period, you called their customer service line, which is on that violation, and you told them your circumstances, they've been trained to automatically give you the right to due process for an appeal.
Okay, thank you. And my final is a follow-up on Representative Morgan's comment. It seems, unlike a license reader, that the speed cameras take the picture of the back of the car as they're going through. I have had some ones where it is your face, but do these readers mostly catch you as you're moving through and the rear of the car?
Yeah, they only capture the rear of the vehicle.
With the
and-
license
With
plate.
the license plate,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Rodriguez.
Hi, Tracy Rodriguez, District 6. I was wondering, I'm sorry that if everybody else knows this and I'm new to it, but I pulled up the sign that's near Ward and it says school, speed limit 20. It has the times Monday to Friday, photo enforced. So I get that it's beyond our control in this room, but is there any process to give feedback to OSTA to say that that our residents are very confused? Like, when I reread that, I remember being confused the first time. I thought, well, maybe now that I've had all this conversation, but I still find it confusing. So I didn't know, is that something that we can do? Can we provide feedback or can we talk to them about that?
Sure, that's a great question. I've provided them with the feedback. It came after a lot of requests for flashing signs to say that there's, speed cameras there, and that's not what the flashing signs do. But that was one remedy that the state gave us to alleviate that signage confusion, is to have flashing lights when the speed limit reduction is in effect. So I'm hoping, and probably that's what they're looking to do statewide for any new projects. But I'm hopeful that going forward, if we expanded this project or we made any changes, that would be one implementation to help, lessen that confusion.
Okay, that's great that you're able to provide them with the feedback because I feel like a lot of people ask the question and the answer sort of seems to stop at it's not in our control, which fair, but it's great that we can tell them what's been going on. I was also wondering just about communication from the town. Like I actually was not aware or had forgotten that the commuting hours that wasn't being enforced over this summer. I got a violation of 31, I think, when there's like 1 minute left. It's late to McKinley. No. And I was wondering what the communication around that would be for September 1. Like, what's the plan from the town if people who commute there regularly are now used to it not being 20 and then it becomes 20 again, which is valid, but what's our communication plan? So residents know.
We'll put it out on social media. We'll put it in the town newsletter for Fairfield Public Schools. We can ask them to put it out to parents.
That's a good idea.
Through the
Parents
news,
were-
through the newsletter, just reminding everybody that the 20 miles per hour will be in effect September 1st.
Okay, and then,
Yeah, and we have the flyer
right,
as well
right.
that we'll get out and post. And all of you help us spread the word as well.
For sure. And then to Drew's point about leasing and finding out about the violation period timing and not being able to communicate that, I would anticipate that our residents would find that confusing. Is there any way that we could address that for everyone, that the appeal time is longer instead of having them actively call in to request it?
Sure, yeah, that's something definitely we could put on our website, as it relates to the speed cameras, the town's website that manages it.
Right.
I think it's a great suggestion to put on the website so that we could at least give them the heads up. Keep in mind, there's 6 violations or 6 reasons when exemptions, thank you, Captain, when a ticket can be appealed. And we're hoping that once those 6 violations, I don't have them in front of me, or they may be in this book, but one of them is, were you told by a police officer to speed because of an emergency? Was your car stolen? Do you remember the others?
The rest of them are related
Yeah,
to red light.
the rest of them are related to the red light cameras, which we do not have in the town. But once people realize that there's the state law only permits certain appeals in there, we're hoping that they will look at the violations, read through it, and then if there's questions, go to the town's website, or call the customer service number to get information.
Okay. I was also wondering about the appeals, like say I got one and I appealed it and then I haven't gotten any further communication. Just hypothetically speaking, would and I was curious about the process and I was going 1 mile per hour over. Not to trying to add a little levity, but what's the process?
We're going 11 miles per hour over the
Thank you.
speed limit.
I was. I apologize. I moved here from Boston, guys. This is actually driving backwards. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. That was a joke. I was going 11 miles over, but I appealed it mostly because I was very interested as an RTM member to see what the process was, and I just haven't had any communication for a couple months, a month. I can't remember. It was towards the beginning, so I'm just curious what the communication is for residents.
So there's probably well over 1,000 appeals in the queue right now.
Sorry.
So it's just a matter of time before that someone will reach out to you. And if you don't hear back, feel free to reach out to us or, really refer back to the town's website, and the phone numbers are posted there
Okay.
for follow-up.
And it comes via email or mail or
Mail.
mail. Thank you. Thank you for all the time.
Sure.
Thank you. I have somebody who has third questions. I want to make sure before we have second questions, Representative Hardigan and then Representative Walk. Yes.
You now.
Mike Hardigan, District 3. During the appeals process, I guess I should say, is it even a possibility that the police department can verify the authenticity of the digital information that you're getting? And a year and a half ago when we were voting on this, I don't even think I would have bothered asking, but the technology has changed so fast that it might be something you guys have access to where you can verify that, for example, Altumit didn't just take 200 videos, dump them into Gemini and say, make all of these appear. Do we have some way of digitally verifying that the information we're getting has not been altered prior to us getting it?
If I had your brain, I probably wouldn't be a cop, I'll tell you that. Think of all those ways around it. But I'll tell you this, so ultimate, when we receive a violation or the reviewer sees the violation, there are 6 images and a video as well as a DMV listing. And the reviewer is reviewing the license plate, the vehicle information, and the speed that's posted and the said violation speed limit. So in other words, 12 and over 12 and over is the violation. So I don't know how someone from a police or town standpoint would verify whether that information that is provided by the vendor is absolutely accurate if it's giving us a DMV listing, a video, and numerous photos of that vehicle driving through the speed camera zone outside of the speed limit.
Thanks. That answers my question.
Thank you. Representative Walk.
Hey, Walk, District 5. Representative Waldron, I thought I was rubbing off on you a little bit. Anyway, I do have a question.
I know.
Okay,
You're going
Margaret.
for it.
It's coming. So just to bring up with Representative Carson brought up that wasn't going to ask because I didn't think it was a question. But now that Representative Carson brought it up, I'm going to ask. So the parking authority and a constituent, just to let you know, a constituent did call me up and complain that she did get a ticket and she's leasing her vehicle. And the ticket from the parking authority went to the leasing company, not to hers. I've been in the car business a long time. I never heard of this. This is the first time I'm hearing this. So if it's going to the leasing company instead of to her, then because they're saying that she doesn't own the car, which is correct. So if you don't own the car, if you're not leasing the car and you have a loan out on your vehicle, you don't own the car either. So is the ticket going to people who don't have? This is what she asked. Is the ticket going to people who don't have a lease also, and not to the person who got not the ticket?
If I could maybe, I think, clarify, is what you're asking, Representative Volk, like, so if I have a car loan, so technically the bank owns the majority of my car, would the ticket go to the bank and not to myself as the car owner? Okay.
Because it's happening with a lease. It's the same point.
Connecticut DMV, when you lease a vehicle, the lease owner is entered as the owner of the vehicle when a vehicle is leased. When you take a loan out via a private company, your vehicle is still registered to the private person. I think that's the difference, is when you have a lease from a company, it's registered technically to that leasing company. When you own the vehicle and you get a loan out from a private entity in Connecticut, forget just speed cameras. In Connecticut DMV, when we run your license plate via our system, it's registered to the person who actually, quote, owns the car.
So
Right,
for
that-
all intents and purposes, unless you have a lease, you are considered by DMV to be the owner of the car, regardless of where it was financed.
That's correct.
So you're saying that because the leasing, the person who's leasing the car, it's not, like you said, owned by the person. I'm just trying to bring this, it's owned by the leasing company.
Yeah,
The leasing
that's
company owns the car.
That's
but-
Connecticut
but-
DMV
but the
stance.
But just so you know that when you lease a car, there is a third party, which is the bank. So where the dealership is the middle person. When you come and lease a car, you're leasing through the dealership, but the loan is actually coming from the bank. So you're saying that the bank.
I think it's I think it's separate. I'm stuck in the vortex, by the way, Jay.
Yeah, that is that is perfect.
Okay.
So anyway, that's where I'm coming from. So we can leave the vortex right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative Welk. I just want to make sure I have a couple people for third questions. Any other second questions? All right, so going to third questions, I have Representative McCabe.
So sorry, hopefully we'll make this quick. I'm a little confused about the appeals process, and sorry, Representative McCabe, District 4, and that it goes to ultimate first. So we have our own people here in Fairfield that are hearing the appeals and all of that, but the first step is not anyone in the town. The first step is you call the number on the violation, and then ultimate somehow moves you along. Like, how does that work exactly?
So ultimate, the vendor is responsible for creating the docket, and then that gets related over to the Fairfield Traffic Authority for the hearing process.
Okay, so all they do is process a docket. And do they ever like weigh in on anything? Because again, this is heard honestly secondhand, so I will not be able to expand upon what I'm about to say. But I have heard from one person who had said, and it could be false, that they were discouraged by the vendor when they called the number to appeal the decision. But it sounds like it's very automated. You call, they don't ask you why. They're just like, cool, I'm going to assign a docket number for you. Yeah?
Yeah, I really can't comment on how that's created or how it's related or how it's overseen, because as the ordinance says, that's overseen by the Fairfield Traffic Authority. And I keep a good distance from town hall when those hearings are taking place. So I can't speak honestly on that and how that's processed.
I think like maybe for a question for our next meeting, it would be helpful to get a sense maybe from someone that is handling this from the traffic authority to explain like what happens starting with ultimate and what their responsibilities are and moving people along.
Just looking at person to be unnamed violation. The back of the violation talks about how to pay and then how to plead, how to contest the violation. And if you wish to contest the violation, you visit this website, fairfield.online, citation, etc., and you log in by the PIN number on the front and contest it via online. And there's a written demand for a hearing must be made no later than 10 days from this notice. And if you don't request a hearing, the determination may be entered against you by default. So there's several different ways to do it. Online is the way to really appeal it. But there's also a phone number here in case people don't have access to online or are confused. And then that's when there's somebody live there to be able to explain to you how do you appeal it and what the process is. And it's our understanding and our, order to ultimate that you create the docket and give it to our appeals representative, which is our attorney hired by the town, to process and go through those claims one by one. So it eventually comes to the town of Fairfield to be the ultimate decider as to if the violation is appealed or not. And that was on purpose. Somebody, it's not attached to the police department, not attached to the vendor, separate and apart from it. They don't even do it anywhere near our building. It's done at town hall. And that's on purpose for transparency purposes.
Thank you. And Representative Barron.
Oh my God, I swear to God, last time, I swear. Okay, so my last question is just about the movable blinking speed radars. They're not the cameras, but they just show you what speed you're going along with the speed limit. And so again, just a question because I know people have asked, is maybe why not using those over the cameras? I know that they do collect some data, and so I'm curious about what that data has provided you all with. And, do they help create behavior change like we are trying to do in order to mitigate the speeding problems?
I believe the speed feedback signs, they do help increase driver awareness, whether they're speeding or not. However, people grow numb to them. And that's why I don't leave them in any one location for an extended period of time, because after a while, it just becomes another flashing light telling you you're being a bad driver. And, that you grow numb to that naturally. So that's why I made it in order to distribute those amongst the town on a rotational basis. And why don't we just use those? Because after a while, people don't care what that sign is telling them. They need to go or get to where they're going as fast as possible. And that's just the culture that we're trying to address.
We've seen historically, prior to my job as chief, I was in traffic unit, and I've seen historical issues surrounding those speed feedback signs. People try to get as high speed as you can go and document it, which flaws the numbers with their phone in their hand. But there's a tactic that we use in traffic, and that is to do multiple things to see how the sign is reacting upon the community. For example, we have the ability to turn the display off, but leave the radar on and retrieve the data, from the sign and store it so we could see actuality. Hey, what's actually happening on this roadway? Then we turn the speed sign on and we say, okay, when we turn the speed sign on and people saw their speed limit, did the speed decrease? And that's when, as Captain Irizarry mentioned, we move those throughout the town to give us a factual data. Where are we having speed problems? And then we combine that with our officers doing the same thing with their laser devices and enforcement activity when we receive complaints. I'll say this, the speeding complaints, most specifically on these roadways that used to come to my office, don't come to my office any longer. I don't know if Captain Irizarry's office receives them, but I have received 0, if not 1 or 2 speeding complaints still, especially when it relates to this speed ATSD area.
Yeah, they've definitely dropped dramatically since the implementation of ATSDs. However, people are saying, oh, now they're coming down my street. It's probably to avoid the cameras, but their perception is that they're speeding. And that's why we assign our traffic officers to address those areas as well.
Or they're not calling us because they don't want us to put a speed camera on their street.
You get funnier as the night goes on. We'll have to have late meetings more often. But thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you. Any last questions related to the speed camera report? Going once, online. I just wanted to publicly say to Captain Irizarry, especially for all the work you've put in, thank you. And not to neglect you, Chief Paris, but I really wanted to highlight the work Captain Irizarry has done.
God willing, I'll be here for another 10 years or so.
Thank you. All right. We still have more agenda items, so don't go anywhere, anybody. Okay. All right. So next, the first select person's office, we have select person Vitale here to present on the resolution regarding the speed camera program plan. I just want to clarify both for members and any members of the public that are following that the resolution put forth to us by first select person Vitale is regarding continuation of the operational plan for the automated traffic enforcement safety devices that was submitted to the Connecticut Department of Transportation. It is not about, this is not the original ordinance itself. I just wanted to clarify that. In any case, this is agenda item number 5. The backup is the same as was referenced in our report. And page 63 of the backup is the first page of the plan that was submitted to the state. So I'll turn this over to First Select Person Vitale.
Thank you. I really don't have anything to present. You have the resolution before you. This is a new program, as the chief explained, both for Fairfield and the state of Connecticut. Now that we've had 3 months of lived experience with it, and we have data that seems to, at first glance, to show that the program is working, that speeding is down in these areas, which was the goal. Appreciate that might change, come September when kids are back at school. But I'm asking the RTM to recommit to this plan. The police have been leading. They are public safety experts, and we rely heavily on them for their expertise and their guidance. But this truly is a town initiative. We're all committed. It's not Biden. It's not political. We've all heard from our constituents that they're concerned about speeding. They're concerned about safety for all users on every street, but especially around our schools where we know that our children are present at all hours of the day. So I thank you for your leadership in this, in passing the ordinance last year. It was a vital step in moving this forward. I thank you for the conversation today and the questions. And just ask you to recommit to the plan as submitted to OSTA and for the continuation of the program for the benefit of our community.
Thank you. We'll open that up to questions. Representative Georgiadis.
Drew Georgiadis, District 9. By recommitting, are you asking the RTM to commit to additional cameras or?
Just the plan that is included in the backup that has already been submitted to OSTA that we have been living with for the last 3
Okay,
months.
so recommitting does not commit to additional cameras. Those would have to be brought through a different process.
That would need to go through the approval process and a public hearing. And we have the additional school zones are already in the works, as the captain reported, and the state has some questions about that. But this is just to a continuation of what is already
No
being
change.
implemented. No change.
No change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions? Right. And any members online with questions? I don't see any. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Treshik.
Eric Treshik. Yes, Eric Treshik, District 9. Thank you, First Select Person Vitale, for the background here. I guess the question I have is, what if we didn't recommit? As in, I'm not. I guess one in the two scenarios, they've either voted to say no, what happens, or if we, I don't know, all abstained, or we made a motion to table it, or something like that. I'm not really sure on the Robert's Rules of Order there, but if we didn't, for some reason, what happens in that case?
I mean, the plan would still be, has been approved and would continue on, but asking for the recommitment. And if there's any, appreciating that if there's any changes that you think should be made, also getting that feedback.
Thank
Got
you.
it. So thank you. So to clarify, then, if we did not pass it or tabled it or something like that, it doesn't actually change the operational plan. That would continue.
At this point, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other
But I will
questions? Oh, sorry.
reconfirm that with the town attorney, but my understanding is that this is our plan. Asking for, just since we've lived it, a lot of, and I understand the questions and some of the public pushback. The police has taken a lot of that. Members of town hall have taken a lot of that heat, and I really want the shared responsibility and a shared ownership of this for the public safety of our community, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Other questions? All right, we have one last agenda item. We have Representatives Diamond, Carson, Zezima, Elric, Pistilli, and Barron. I'm not sure who is, I think it's Representative Pistilli is taking the lead to present on their request to form an ordinance drafting committee related to the automated traffic enforcement safety devices. This is agenda item number 6. Backup is on page 269. I just wanted to take a moment before Representative Pistilli presents just to explain this process, because again, I know there's a lot of people following along. Per our rules to regulate, the first necessary step towards the development or revision of any ordinance is that 2 or more RTM members make a request for the formation of an ordinance drafting committee to be placed on our agenda. Should that vote pass, then the committee will be formed, begin to meet, and that's the point where they would be discussing any specific revisions they're interested in making to the original ordinance. And so I'll turn it over to Representative Pistilli.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Sharon Pistilli, District 5. We would like to form the ordinance drafting committee on the automated traffic and enforcement safety devices. And the ordinance addresses elements of the traffic camera program that are separate from the individual elements of the plan that identifies sites and signage. So we'd like to look at the elements that fall under the ordinance. So just for the public's knowledge, some of the design provisions fall under the ordinance, but not all of them. Okay, and so that's something that obviously we can only review what's in the ordinance. And now that we have a few months of data behind us and we've received feedback, both positive and negative from our constituents, it makes sense to go back to revisit the elements in the ordinance that perhaps could be changed. So what we'd like to do is take an opportunity to meet with stakeholders, both in the, members of the town, members of law enforcement, to take a look at the elements in the ordinance that might be changed. And after we gather the information from the town bodies, we'll also work with the town attorney on any potential amendments. And also the meetings for the ordinance drafting committee would be publicly noticed as our other business, but just for the benefit of the public. They are noticed publicly and can be attended by the public. I don't know if there are any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Carson and sorry.
I just want to know, I'm on the committee, but I just want to know exactly how logistically this works as far as getting input from the traffic authority and then OSTA. Like, how do we pass an ordinance, then send it to the traffic authority? Do we get input from them and get their sign off on the things that we want to do? And then we vote on it, and then they send it to the traffic authority. They send it to OSTA. Just kind of curious.
Just to,
do we know this process exactly?
Well,
Sorry.
so when we go about these revisions, because we are going to have to receive feedback from stakeholders as we go along, part of that would also be making sure that we understand the process for any amendments, to your point.
Okay.
thank you. Representative Britton.
I'm assuming there's the opportunity to add members to this committee?
Absolutely.
And do I do that now?
We
or
thought
do-
you'd never ask.
So the process would be any members, certainly this would be open to any members of the RTM who are interested, and you can just let me know, and we'll vote to form the committee next week at our regular meeting, and then SLMC will populate it. So any members who are interested in participating should let me know, and then assuming that the vote to form the committee passes, anybody wants
Thank
to
you.
list on it. Which was the next thing I was going to
Is
say.
that,
So
is
perfect
that,
question.
is that saying you're interested, Representative Britton?
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Hardigan.
Mike Hardigan, District 3. So we have a vote to reaffirm our commitment to the existing ordinance and we're establishing a committee. Is the purpose of the committee?
Just to clarify, the resolution that was put forth by the first select person is not about the original ordinance. It is about the specific plan for those 6 sites that was submitted to the Connecticut Department of Transportation. This is to form a drafting committee that would look at revisions to the original ordinance.
I think I understand it, just phrased it wrong. But is the intention then to not examine or redo or make changes to what we're voting to commit ourselves to? So is the plan off the table, essentially? Or is the committee actively going to be exploring changing that?
I think it's impossible to say at this point what ordinance revisions the committee would be looking at. Oh, point of clarification from Representative McCabe.
So I think what we can do, and I'm going to look back at the moderator to make sure that I'm not speaking at a school, but in terms of the plan, that's the 6 sites, that's the signage, that technically is the 24/7 enforcement. Those are all like plan things. And the traffic authority oversees the plan in terms of making changes. We can request those changes. And then this committee is looking at a piece of legislation that we control to make changes ourselves.
And I think what we would have to do is, let's assume that this committee is formed, that they do their work, come up with revisions. I think we would have to consult with probably the town attorney to determine how those revisions then apply to the plan that's in existence.
Could you give me an example of something that would fit that category where here's something we're talking about making a change to the ordinance, but it doesn't have anything to do with the plan?
Representative Basili?
Well, so for instance, my understanding is like the actual sites where the cameras are, right? That's not in the ordinance. And then the specific signage, which is out of our control, that's not in the ordinance. So, I mean, Representative Hardigan, you bring up a good point, but part of the exercise is going to be, here's what we've heard from the public. This is what's controlled in the ordinance. This is what is not.
I think I'm just trying to figure out exactly which is in which pile. That's all. I'm trying to figure out what you just said.
Do you have another point of clarification, Representative?
Unless you want to.
It's go ahead.
You're the moderator.
Go ahead.
If you, like, an example of what's controlled by the ordinance is the fee structure. So our ordinance is meant to cover a traffic camera program no matter where it ended up being implemented. There are certain sort of standards of legal sort of behaviors. So the privacy information's in our ordinance, the appeals process is in our ordinance, the fee structure's in our ordinance. So I think if the members look at the ordinance and see the different categories of action, those are the things that we would be able to potentially revisit and see if there is room for changes.
Okay. I think that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Representative Diamond.
Craig Diamond, District 2. So Representative Basili, I'm assuming that part of this process is going to be figuring out where some of these boundaries are. So to your question, we probably can't answer 100% tonight, but as the process goes on, I assume we'll be able to know what those boundaries are more definitively, correct?
Yes, and if everybody wants to review the ordinance, it was in last January, February 2025 backup. So all the individual information is in there.
Yeah.
In the packet.
Correct. And so what we're just voting on now is whether or not we should move forward. Oh, and I see online we have some questions. What we're voting on now is simply whether or not we should begin the necessary process that could lead to ordinance revision. There is no specific revisions on the table at this point, anything like that. This is just the first step that, per our rules to regulate, must happen in order for us to look at the process of ordinance revision. And we vote next week, correct? Any other in-person questions? Online, Representative Longo, you had a question.
Hi, yes, sorry, Melissa Lago, District 1. So with this ordinance, we will, does there have, and forgive me because I have forgotten what the rules to regulate. Does there need to be a certain number of RTM representatives that would like to be
As long as it's 2 or more.
two or
Um,
more?
yep,
Okay,
and
thank you.
then
I was
there's
confused
no
if it was
maximum
2 or 3, so I just, thank you for that.
Yeah, 2 or more, and there's no maximum limit, and so any, assuming, we move forward next week, this committee passes in terms of its formation, any RTM members who are interested in participating are welcome to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you, Representative Pistilli. All right, and looking around, seeing no new business, we will adjourn. The meeting is adjourned at 10:08 PM. Thank you.